It is clear.
Good afternoon, everyone. From ASEAN, Indonesia, Philippines, and Brunei, and this webinar today, we have also guests coming from US. Very good morning for Dr. Marla and Dr. Rebecca. I see also some participants coming from China, South Korea, India, Pakistan, Malaysia, Burundi, Nigeria. Hello, good afternoon all. Welcome in the fourth webinar of ASEAN Safe Schools Initiative. Thank you very much for your coming to this webinar online. Meet me again, Meli Camelia, as the ACPMT. This webinar is supported by ECHO in a consultation with ASEAN Secretariat and also the ASEAN Member States, and collaboration with the APCSS, Asia Pacific Coalition for School Safety, and also the IFRC, International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. For your information, this webinar is the last webinar that held by the ACPMT in 2019. So I hope all participants here today can be very active in discussion in especially to give the input or asking questions. And for today, we will discuss about the theme of the youth activism in DRR and school safety. At this moment, we are live from ASEAN Secretariat Office in Jakarta. And we already have a moderator with us here, Mr. Agung Pamungkas from the Education, Youth and Sports Division. Good afternoon, Mr. Agung.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
And also we have two speakers from Indonesia, Mr. Fajar Siddiq, and from the Red Cross Philippines, Mr. Christian Dagdag. Hi all, can you hear me?
Hi, hello.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So as usual, I will inform first for those participants who want to speak or asking questions, please unmute your audio with click the button on the left bottom. And also you can type the chat on the right screen if you have questions. But for those who doesn't want to speak, please to mute your audio because we will not hear the speaker if it's too noisy. So that's all from me. Enjoy the webinar. Me and Mr. Renar Berandi will write your question later. Now I will give the role to Mr. Agung. Please, Mr. Agung, carry on.
Thank you. Okay, hello everyone. I hope that you can hear me clearly. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Melly, for inviting us, the ASEAN Secretariat, to host the fourth webinar of ASEAN Safe School Initiative. First of all, my name is Agung. I'm working at the ASEAN Secretariat as the Education, Youth, and Sports Officer, together with our colleagues from disaster management and educations. We are jointly handling the ASEAN Safe School Initiative for the past 5 years, since 2014. And then we are very happy to host this, especially because we discuss about the youth activism. So before we start off, I would like to also thank our experts, Fajar and Christian, who are very keen to speak on this topic, specifically on the youth activism. So before we start off, please allow me to provide you with the background in a nutshell. Since the early years of the establishment of ASEAN in 1967, our leaders have always heralded the importance of the young people in ASEAN agenda. As a part of the youth myself, I firmly believe that the youth is a very important sections of the populations in any country in ASEAN and beyond, and are in need of attentions as we are both the current and the future leaders, as well as the catalysts for economic, social, and cultural development. The youth sector of ASEAN acknowledges how important it is to strengthen youth involvement and participations in building an ASEAN community through volunteerism, as our region continues to be frequented by natural and man-made disasters. Well, the big questions we have now is that to what extent are we as a youth able to contribute building a resilience in school and community we live in today? What is the strategic role of the youth in disaster risk reductions? And when you hear about the youth activism for the first time, what does that imply? Does it have to be physically out in the streets protesting for a peace campaign, or in what way? So today we are very lucky to have our two experts joining us to discuss these pertinent issues. And I would like to invite everyone in this webinar group to ask as many questions as you have, because this is your only chance. And this is a very good timing for us to be involved in these honest conversations. So without further ado, please allow me to invite the first speaker, Mr. Fajar Siddiq. Before we ask him to present, I would like to give you his background in a nutshell. He is a disaster risk reduction specialist. He graduated from a State Islamic University in Jakarta, doing international relations, and he also is a graduate of Indonesia Defense University. He took disaster management for national security in masters, and he graduated cum laude. And talking about working experience, he was a disaster risk reductions officer in Indonesia National Disaster Management Authority, or BNPB. Before that, he was also a facilitator of disaster management plan in Papua under the Disaster Risk Reduction Indonesia. And speaking of the awards, he got numerous awards in his life. He's awarded an ASEAN Youth Volunteer Disaster Risk Reductions Grant recipient in 2017. And recently, he also snatched Integrated Research on Disaster Risk Young Scientist Fellow in 2018. So without further ado, I would like to invite Fajar to briefly present on his presentations on youth activism in building resilience in school and community. Fajar, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity for Mr. Agung, Mbak Meli, and all the participants. Thank you for virtually coming to this webinars. I would like to say thank you as well for ASI and its consortium for the opportunity for me to talk the current issues on youth and disasters, and particularly on youth and activism in Indonesia, and how actually youth can best contribute in disaster risk reductions, with the case of EYDRR, or Indonesian Youth on Disaster Risk Reductions, and also You Inspire Indonesia. Next, please. Okay, I'm going to open the presentations by looking at the data, the catastrophic data in ASEAN for the last few years. We can see from the charts and the presentations that starting in 2012 until 2018, or at least in 8 years back, we can see that a lot of disasters occurs in ASEAN, particularly related to the hydrometeorological hazard, with more than 50% of floods occurs in the last 6 to 8 years. Other several disasters like geological hazards, even like landslide, typhoon, and so on, are also continuing rising in Asia Pacific, particularly in ASEAN. And looking mainly to Indonesia's case, Indonesia as the biggest countries in ASEAN face and experience multiple types of disasters from 2012 until 2016. We can see a lot of disasters occurs, particularly related to hydrometeorological hazards and also geological hazards. From these graphs, we can actually draw attentions and concerns that actually Indonesia is very prone to disasters, and we need to do a more specific comprehensive in order to reduce the risk of disasters in Indonesia. Like what should we prepare, what should be improved, and which group is the most vulnerable one, and which options can be taken to boost the resiliencies of communities based on the existing capacity. Next, I'm going to talk specifically on the data sets of schools affected by disasters and the numbers of schools in medium and high risk areas in Indonesia. So based on the presentations, we can see that Indonesia has thousands schools that were built in the medium and high risk area, which is very vulnerable to disasters. And yeah, we can see like earthquake, we have 52,000 of schools were prone to earthquake, followed by floods, landslides, tsunamis, or even volcanic eruptions. This data clearly shows us that actually we need to deliver a more specific and comprehensive actions toward disaster risk actions. And the comprehensive actions need to be done not only focusing on activities carried by government, but also with other stakeholders like civil society, non-government organizations, even the youth group itself. So next, I'm going to present particularly and explain to you a bit more in detail about the risk of earthquake only. Even though when we talk about earthquake, we can see the data from the National Earthquake Centers that Indonesia is surrounded by 295 active faults and 12 megathrust zone, which is from the west to the east. We can see that most of the schools were built in highly prone areas, which is mainly focused in Sumatra and Java. A lot of schools are very vulnerable to disasters. So we can imagine how prone is our schools toward earthquake. Do we have a comprehensive policies regarding the safe schools? And also, are young people and students equipped with sufficient knowledge of disasters? And can also youth be involved in building resiliency in schools and communities? That's some questions in mind regarding the topic of youth, disasters, and also schools related issues. Next. Speaking on the discourse of youth and disasters in Indonesia, there are some interesting facts that happens in Indonesia. First fact that is actually data from national statistic agencies of Indonesia tell us that 63 millions or around 25% of Indonesians' population is young people. Even though globally speaking, even almost a third of the world population is young people. So we can see a lot of people, a lot of young people now exist, and now the world faces the biggest cohort efforts of young people. So that's the positive side of the youth and populations in Indonesia and global. But in fact, Plan International's research found that children and youth, when it comes to these disasters, represents a third of disaster victims. However, in a positive side, youth also can contribute at all stages of disaster, from prevention, response, to recovery, and others activities that can be done by youth. But again, it seems that the reality is not matched with expectation, because from realities of Indonesia, even though I believe that there are some positive policies towards youth and disasters, but again, and we see clearly youth is only partially involved and only seen as the object of disasters rather than the subject of the policy. There's also a programs of youth in governments, in civil societies, even though in international or national organizations. But again, there's no specifically a fixed thing official youth platform on the DRR Indonesia. So that's a very interesting topic, that Indonesia has a quarter of populations of youth, but at the end of the day, there's no specific official platform of the RR Indonesia that focusing for mainstreaming and building the resilience of communities in Indonesia. So next, what's the challenge actually for youth in Indonesia? And globally speaking as well, we can draw the attention from the research founded by the experts that actually social norms have often failed to incorporate youth in the leadership roles and decision-making process. Even though during emergency situations, youth sometimes is left with a helpless, even though only seen as a passive victims of disasters. And this is a very sad phenomenon. Youth, even though from the ACEO research found that can contribute best in DRR if they are fully utilized. But however, their capacity has not been fully tapped very well. Next. Another research finding from other institutions at the global and national level also found that actually youth can do enormous roles in responding to disasters, can be the investment option for the partners, plan internationals, or even the individual researchers also found that youth can actually advocate and lead the change within their schools and communities. However, this potential and capacity has not been fully utilized well and also still untapped very well in Indonesia case. Next. So what actually youth can do when they given the space to do a specific things in mainstreaming and building resilience of the community. So I'm going to explain a bit more about what we have done in Indonesia through EYDR or Indonesian Youth on Disaster Reductions and also You Inspired in order to actually prove that actually youth is able to do more than what society expected in disaster risk reductions. Next. So through EYDR and knowing and realizing the notions that Indonesia is still lacking with the disaster risk reduction activities that connected with youth, we through Indonesian Youth and Disaster Risk Reductions actively made infographic of disasters that we made and shared to our accounts like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, even the WhatsApp group, with the aim to actually to produce and share the information that is needed by the communities when the disaster strikes, so people can actually attain the information from our social media and know actually what to do when disasters occur. Next. Other than making the infographics that we share to social media, we also sometimes doing a DRR socializations and school drills. Even though we believe that this is not a regular activities that we do, or we do this in a voluntary basis, or with the collaborations with other stakeholders, this activity is actually having a positive response from schools, and this is a proof that actually youth can play a significant role in filling the information and a gap of disaster risk reductions in Indonesia. We also aware that this, even though this socialization and school read is not a full implementation of 3 pillars of safe schools, but at least from these activities, we fill the gap of information by helping schools knowing the risk while waiting the governments and local disaster agency conduct a full program. Oftentimes, we made or we conduct the DRR socialization at schools with a 3 steps. The first step we will do and make a meeting with the school committees. It is followed by socializations, workshop, and FGD concerning the hazard, and then we do the risk assessment with the students and the teachers. So we map all the schools and identify which area is prone to disasters and specific hazards, and which part of or the locations of school that it can be used as the evacuation route, the assembly point, and so on. At the end, we identify together the specific idea to actually improve the situations at school and install the disaster signage, and at the end, we do the school drills. And we do this in some schools in Asia, not only in Jakarta, but also in Bandung and also in East Java. Next. So from the involvement of youth in Indonesia and particularly in Asia Pacific and ASEAN, we know that there are some youth programs in DRR in Indonesia and ASEAN. One of the program is actually the Asian Youth Volunteer Program, which is the annual program of ASEAN, where the host is the UK and Malaysia, that's trying to build the capacities of young people in ASEAN with a thematical program. Each year, this program selects the themes that ranging from poverty, environmental issues to DRR, and building the capacities of youth. I was a part of AYPP in 2007, and DRR or disaster risk reductions and disaster risk management is actually a theme on that year, where actually during that time, I and others 49 participants or representatives from ASEAN countries were trained on the RR in the class and in the field by the experts. And we did community activities and excursions to actually build the capacities of community that is hosted in the countries. So actually, after the programs, each participant is challenged to propose the solutions for problems in respective countries, and at the end of the day, small grants are given to successful proposal. So my project after the successful proposals of a YPP is the Karang Taruna Siaga Bencana, which is a project that I delivered in Jakarta, which is a youth and community-based disaster risk management activities that's focusing on urban fire in Jakarta. I try to actually encourage young people in East Jakarta focusing on urban fire to do actually disaster risk reduction activities within their community. It starts with the meeting with communities, workshop, assessment risk mapping, until the socializations into the fire drill that is all led by youth. And this kind of activities is examples of collaborations among communities, governments, and CSO. That is proof that against youth actually can do more in disaster risk reduction. Other than that, our activities within EYDR is focusing on social media or online platforms. The other activities that we do is actually Cerdas Bencana series, which is a creative short articles of writing that is published along with an infographic that we share through social media and our blog in order to make people more familiar with disaster topic. Sometimes people think that I'm talking or discussing about disasters, that disaster is very boring topic or even a taboo, or sometimes lacking with disaster literacy in Asia. So by these small activities or programs that we carry through social media, we can gain a disaster literacy, make a disaster topic fun, simple, and understandable and interesting for young people. Next, actually, Cool Up, the activities that we do regularly in order to respond the current trending topic of disasters. So basically, Cool Up is online discussion that we do through WhatsApp group. Why we choose WhatsApp? Because we all know that WhatsApp is one of the most widely used chat platform in Indonesia, and people receive, share information through WhatsApp. So actually, the idea is actually to use the WhatsApp to share the information of disasters, and we make the WhatsApp actually in response to the trending disasters topic in Indonesia. For example, after the Lombok earthquakes in 2018, people get panic and receive a lot of misinformation and hoax about the earthquake that would become in the near future. So we made the Cool Up specifically talking about earthquake to actually counter the misinformations. This Cool Up also proved that can enable direct interactions between experts and communities, also to provide the space to counter a hoax. This Cool Up is actually one of the very simple activities that we can do through social media, and this is a proof that actually youth can also lead their activities even though they are occupied with others' agendas or their daily activities. Moving forward from EYDRR, I'm going to explain a bit more about the activities that we do under You Inspire Indonesia, or Youth and Young Professionals on Innovation, Science, Technology Platform for Resiliency in Indonesia. So basically, when we talk about EYDR, that more to like a youth voluntary platform to share and discuss about disaster topics, EYDR is more to like a newly CSO in Indonesia that consists of youth and young professionals who have interest in the RR that is supported by UNESCO Jakarta. So actually, You Inspire started from a group of youth and young professionals who have passions on the RR and understand there is still like activities of disaster reduction in Indonesia that carried out by youth. So then by the group of youth and young professionals, they start to to do simple activities until they got recognized from other stakeholders. I'm going to start the activities carried out by You Inspires through sharing our activities and products from Science Communications Division. So basically, what we do in You Inspires through the Science Communications Division is actually making the fact sheet. This fact sheet is actually frequently the booklet that consists of the frequently asked questions that we made after a disaster occurs in Indonesia. For example, once again, after a Lombok earthquake in 2018 or after the Palu earthquake in 2018 as well, there are a lot of misinformations and hoax coming up in the online discussions and in the news. So we actually try to identify and gather the list of the frequently asked questions by the communities, and then at the end we find the answers and recheck the answer from the experts from the governments, universities, CSO, and others. Then from those answers, we try to translate the scientific answers to the easy to understand narrative along with illustrations and graphics so people can easily understand what they need to do when disasters occurs in the future. Next is the video that we made through asking questions by the experts. Oftentimes, after disasters, again, people getting angry, getting so mad with the misinformations and hoax. We are trying to counter those informations that is wrongly shared by people through making video series by asking the experts. So actually, we collect against the questions from the communities, and then we made the video series concerning on specific topics and asking it to the experts in order to share the right and valid information. And also, we also made hackathon, which is a series of hackathon that trying to actually solve the disaster problems by making specific ideas on specific issues. For example, on March 2019 and also on October 2019, we made a hackathon specifically with the geological hazards that occurs in Indonesia. So actually, we open the registrations and we open the youth groups to join the hackathon, and then they will team up and solve the problems based on the proposed topic that we are focusing on. Other than that, we are actually doing the emergency data acquisitions by deploying our Sky Volunteer team. So You Inspires in collaborations with Sky Volunteers when disasters affected sites is needs the aerial mapping. We go there and then we do the rapid assessment in order to help the governments to map the affected area. Other than that, by not only by doing activities as projects, time by time, we also know and understand how important the advocacy is. So we also trying to do and make an advocacy activities not only in national level but also in the international level by attending conference and also Global Disaster Risk Reduction Forum. So far, we have attended GPDRR 2019 in Geneva, Switzerland, and also some event that giving a floor for the youth to contribute and share their experience to actually make people and societies understand how important the youth in disaster risk reduction and or in order to mainstreaming DRR to the communities. And at the end of the day, after the GP in Geneva, we got the positive response from National Disaster Management Authorities of Indonesia or BNPB that actually recognize our activities under You Inspires as one of the activities that officially acknowledged by governments that represents youth and young professionals in Indonesia. So Indonesia through GPDRR and from Indonesian's government's representative that there we are trying to advocate You Inspire to be acknowledged in Indonesian's country report, and at the end of the day governments agreed to make Indonesian You Inspire Indonesia as the official platform for youth and young professionals in Indonesia. Not only speaking about advocacies in Indonesia levels, but also when talking about a broader specifics of You Inspires, what we do so far in Inspires also inspires others, youth and young professionals in Asia Pacific. So we got a tremendous positive response within You Inspires in Asia Pacific. So other youth and young professionals in other countries is want to replicate the You Inspires in their country. So by the support of UNESCO Indonesia and UNESCO Asia Pacific, now we have You Inspires branches, not only in Indonesia, but also in other countries like the Philippines, Malaysia, Nepal, Pakistan, and so on. And this is one again is a proof that actually youth can do more, or youth can do what even societies doesn't expect before. So from these presentations at the end, I would like to conclude my presentations with the key takeaways that actually youth in Indonesia is represents a quarter of Indonesians' populations. However, their ability has not been fully tapped. There's still a lack of understanding of youth as a subject of the policies. The shifting paradigms of youth roles is needed in Indonesia in order to mainstream the DRR. Greater space and roles for youth investments in building capacities of youth are essentials. There is also a need to strengthen the commitments of ASEAN stakeholders and building the capacities of youth. And at the end, as disasters continue to rise in ASEAN and Asia, partnering with youth and building a resilience in community is a key to ensure more resilient community in Indonesia and ASEAN. Thank you for the time. I give back the time to the moderator now.
Okay, Fajar, thank you so much for giving us out your presentations. It's very enlightening. I have tons of questions in mind, which I'm quite sure a lot of people in the webinar group also has a lot of things to ask. But before we have a Q&A sessions, I would like to also invite the second and the last speakers for today. We are very pleased to have Mr. Christian Dakdak. He's working at the Philippine Red Cross. He is currently a disaster preparedness program coordinator. He has a decade of experience of providing excellent humanitarian services in the Philippines as well as in the region. He graduated from Laguna State Polytechnic Uni from the Philippines and earned a master's in public administrations. So without further ado, I would like to give this time to Mr. Dakdak for your presentations, specifically in talking about Philippine Red Cross integrating why adapt. So the time is yours.
Thank you, Alvin, and good afternoon to everyone. Okay, so I'd like also to thank Fajar for the wonderful presentation. And speaking of that, I would like to anchor my presentation to what has been presented by Mr. Ajur, that the Southeast Asia, specifically the country of the Philippines and Indonesia, are two of the most at risk country in the effects of climate change and global warming. Thus, the Red Cross and Red Crescent Climate Center tapped the Philippine Red Cross in developing a curriculum that might be suitable and interesting to the youth. In the year 2017, as I've mentioned, Red Cross and Red Crescent Climate Center Philippine Red Cross, Plan International, and the Emerson College in the United States work together to develop a curriculum that might be interesting and can be a use of help for the youth in their sharing of knowledge on how to cope, on how to adapt in the effects of climate change. We think of something that how are we going to mobilize the number of youth, not only in the Philippines, but in the world. As mentioned, a third of the global populations are youth. And more than the third, it is also an opportunity for the Philippine Red Cross to mobilize the youth in making actions in supported by the expert and the community members. Thus, we, we supported the idea of having the Y-ADAPT as one of the key assets and one of the key programs that we can introduce to our schools, and it is supported by the Ministry of Education in the Philippines. But before we came to that idea, the Philippine Red Cross, through this lead of the Disaster Management Service and the Red Cross Youth, think of the Y-ADAPT as a key to our strategic goal 2017-2020 and how are we going to mobilize the youth. Having that said, the Philippine Red Cross has actually three main goals, and the Y-ADAPT supporting goals number 1 and number 3. Goal number 1 is really to strengthen the vulnerable communities through integrated humanitarian services. And second, strengthening our local chapters in the performance through organizing sustainable capacities and greater accountability to partners and the community. And the Y-ADAPT really is a good idea, a tool, and a program that can support in these two goals. Okay, so to start with, the Disaster Management Service and the Red Cross Youth critically analyze what the Y-ADAPT can offer. And upon understanding that the Y-ADAPT is a critical, innovative, and very interesting tools for the youth, because this is a tool that we make sure it is very interactive and a game-based approach that is suitable for youth ages 13 to 25 years old, basically those who are in the school ages. Thus, we inform the PRC management about the Y-ADAPT program and encourage them to support at least the testing and launching of the Y-ADAPT. It was in the year 2017 and 2018. And then afterwards, after a series of testing from the Philippines, and I think also in Indonesia, Haiti, and other countries, we launched the recent and the latest Y-ADAPT this 2019 in the Micronesia. And also, the Philippines make use of these available resources and introduce the dissemination of the Y-ADAPT to our chapters or to our local offices nationwide. We call for youth leaders all over the Philippines and introduces the Y-ADAPT using the 7 interactive sessions. After which, the Red Cross Youth Department of the Philippine Red Cross continuously meet and cooperate with the Ministry of Education to support the Philippine Red Cross in the dissemination and presentation of the Y-ADAPT program. The Philippine Red Cross and the Department of Education signed a memorandum of agreement that the Department of Education is really endorsing the Y-ADAPT as one of the ideal school curriculum for all public and private elementary and high school in the Philippines. To make sure that we are connected and we can monitor the implementation and the activities of the youth, the national headquarters of the Philippine Red Cross created a group in Facebook, Viber, and WhatsApp to monitor the implementation of the Y-ADAPT in the different parts of the Philippines. Next. Yeah, so as mentioned, after we collected youth leaders from the different provinces, different schools, and different branch of the Philippine Red Cross, we give them the opportunity by supporting them technically and financially to at least roll out the Y-ADAPT and train other local leaders in their communities, especially youth leaders in different schools, in universities, and junior high. Next. Using the 7 interactive modules, which the session 1, it introduces the global youth actions or adaptation activities in different countries. This time, or at this module, the youth from the Philippines are being aware of what are the other youth activities implemented in other countries that might be relevant and adaptable in our local settings. And the second module is the climate change challenge, in which we make them feel that the climate change is not only happening in the Philippines, but it is happening all over the globe. In this session, we also explain the causes and the things that exacerbate the global warming and the effects of climate change. And under session 3, Map the Hazard, from the global perspective, we bring those impacts of climate change in their local communities. We help them identify what are the things that exacerbate because of the global warming as the effect of climate change. Some identify the sea level rise or extreme weather condition and the sudden hot and rain and several things. And then at session number 4, we also help them to see that the community is composed of many groups, individuals, and experts that they can tap in the event of the projects or activities that they wanted to implement in order to adopt in the impact of climate change. And having that two in their mind already, we help them to facilitate on how to create a adaptation plan, on how to communicate their action plans into the expert, to government leaders, and community members in order for them to be supported in terms of technical and financial if needed. And at number 6, choose your challenge, it is finally identifying the priorities. Because for sure, the impacts of climate change are numerous, but we cannot act at the same time with one activity. Thus, we support them in analyzing which of the following impacts they would like to prioritize. And then from there, we would like them to make an action plan that is youth-led and that is acceptable by the communities and that can be facilitated within 6 to 8 weeks. Because as we know, the youth of today or the millennials are very much keen to see the result or the output of something that they do or something that they plan for. We don't want to create a program that will last for about a year or 2 because it might lose their interest, and we don't like to lose as well the momentum that are already developed from the sessions 1 to session 6. And session 7, it is a global platform that we would like to share from the rest of the countries that other than the adaptation activities that created in their communities, they can also go back to the Global Y Adapt platform and search and look if there are other activities that are still relevant to their communities. Next. Okay, so for example, in the Philippines, we have several successful stories of Y Adapt implementation. We have number 1, after we trained the school leaders, we advised them to look for their peers or for their friends who are willing as well to support them in implementing adaptation activities in their school or in their communities. After which, they will be the one as well as youth leaders and youth members will coordinate to the principals, will coordinate to the teachers, parents, and even village leaders of what activities they would like to implement. After which, they will be doing the so-called adaptation card. As you can see, the adaptation card examples are on your left. So these one are tree planting activities in one of the village of the Philippines. So it's in the southernmost part of the Philippines. And aside from this, another success activities are students from a local schools or public schools develop a proposal to have a screen on their school windows to prevent dengue. Because recently a dengue outbreak was declared in numbers of regions in the Philippines. And this is very timely. And the local officers and the teachers and parents supported the idea of the youth. One more thing, a certain group of youth from the northern parts of the Philippines propose a competition for clean and green, not only for the school level, but for the entire city of Alaminos. These youth leaders presented a adaptation plan to the city mayor, which encourages different barangays or villages within the city to participate and have a friendly competition on who and which village or barangay will have the most green areas in their community in response to climate change and global warming. So there are other activities that are a good example of youth initiative in the Philippines. And for now, that are the things that I would like to share on the successful implementation. And the photo diaries are the things from week 1, week 2 until week 8 that we are encouraging them to place on the PowerPoint that can be shared as well with step by step on how they will able to do the same activities if other communities would like to duplicate or to replicate the activities that they've done in their own. Next. As I have mentioned, although this Y-ADAPT program is quite new, but other or numbers of national societies already implemented the Y-ADAPT. For example, in the Philippines, it's not just the Philippine Red Cross who implemented the Y-ADAPT program. We have the Plan International, the CARE, CORD-AID, and the Department of Education also implemented the Y-ADAPT programming in their schools. For example, me and my colleague, a youth from the Philippines, we went to the North Pacific in Micronesia to support the Northern Pacific Islands of Micronesia, Marshall Islands, and Palau in starting and building a youth leaders, facilitators leader on Y-ADAPT in order for these in response to. Next, please. Hello? Hello? Next, please. Okay, so aside from Y-ADAPT, we also have other innovations and school DR activities implemented in the different schools of the Philippines. Aside from Y-ADAPT, I would like to share these 4. First, we have the PASA Youth. PASA Youth stands for Participatory Approach in Safe Shelter Awareness. So these are the basic things on how a student or how a youth can assess the stability of a house or a shelter that they currently or they are living in order to strengthen it or in order to inform the parents or the schools, if it is in a school, on how to strengthen the structure that they are currently staying. And then in partnership with ASIS, we developed the Master of Disaster game because we also agree, and based on Mr. Fahar presentation as well, youth are somehow quite hard to get the attention of. That's why we developed the Master of Disaster game. This is a board game which is very interesting and very engaging. So this game will help them to plan and to think of the activities that they must do before, during, and after different hazard or disaster in their communities occur. And then in partnership with the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent, we have the Hazard app. So this is a mobile application for iOS and Google, which can be downloaded in all smartphones, and they can be notified if ever there are certain hazards or disaster happened in a area that they set on their mobile phones. Aside from the notification, they can also play the interactive games in the application, in which they can learn what to do before, during, and after a disaster as well. Aside from Hazard app, we also have the First Aid app in partnership with American Red Cross. And one of the most in-demand equipment that we currently have in the Philippine Red Cross is the virtual reality game. This one is in partnership with Korean Red Cross and Asia Pacific Disaster Resilience Center. Currently, we have 3 different games. We have the how to escape a fire in a building or theater. This one is a interactive activities like an augmented reality, in which by using the tools, someone can experience an almost actual event of a fire and theater, and how he can escape from using the fire extinguisher. And then second, we have a sinking ship. This is very relevant in the case of the Philippines, because we are composed of 7,000 islands, and riding a boat or ship is one of the most common transportation that the Filipino uses. And how to escape a sinking ship is a very good experiences for the youth, especially for the young ones. They are being taught on how to properly use the life vest, and where to escape if the boat is sinking. And lastly, just this September, we have the earthquake simulation activity. And also that is very timely and relevant, because we in the Philippines are preparing for the possible 7.2 earthquake in Metro Manila if the West Valley Fault moved. So these 3 activities are very much in demand. This is being requested to the Philippine Red Cross by different agencies, such as the Department of Education. Even private institutions are leading mobile network provider is also requesting this one to the Philippine Red Cross. Next, please. Okay, so I think I'm on my last slide. So for the materials and for the other informations, you can access the www.climatecenter.org, and you can download all the materials that we use in Y-Adapt programming. And if you have questions as well, you can email us at dms@redcross.org.ph. I think that's for now. Thank you.
Oh, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Christians, for your thorough presentations. We've now come to the end of these presentations, and now I'd like to open it for a Q&A session. But before that, I think as a moderator, I will take my liberty to specifically check with all of you, since we talk about the youth, right? Activism in DRR, but we don't know what youth is. I mean, in ASEAN, the youth is someone who is aged between 15 and 35 years old. That's categorized under youth. But I'm not sure whether Indonesia and the Philippines also has that the same term with ASEAN So in that case, can I check briefly with you, Fajar and Christians, the youth in Indonesia and the Philippines? Is that also the same category in terms of the age, or you have a different terms?
I can
Okay,
speak
thank you.
on. Okay, you go ahead, Fahar.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Agung, for the question. So, talking in particular regarding the law of youth in Indonesia. So, based on the law number 40 in 2010 years, youth is generally considered as people in the range of age of 16 to 30 by Indonesian governments. But actually, under EYDR, we do have the same definitions. But in terms of youth inspires, we have a broader range of youth because we also connect with youth and young professionals, which is young professionals is up to 40. But specifically for EYDR, is only 16 to 30.
Okay.
Same with the law of the nation's governments on youth.
All right. Noted, Fajar. Thanks. What about in the Philippines, Christian?
It's from 15 to 30.
15 to 30.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So in general, we have the average, almost the same amount of understanding between ASEAN and also each respective member states. The reason I'm asking that, because I think we need to have a clear-cut definitions of what youth is in terms of definitions, because we talk about this a lot, but if we don't have a basis where we talk about the youth, it's just that it's very confusing if we don't understand about that. So, okay. I saw there are 2 questions on the text box, which I would love to read it out for all the speakers. We've got the first one is from Miss Nurma from BPBD Bogor, Indonesia, addressed to Fajar. So Fajar, can you explain about the You Inspire? What is that? And the what is that? I don't know. IYDRR strategic plan for the next 5 years. Probably you need to tell us about what the You Inspire is, and then what does IYDRR stand for.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Agung, for the questions, and thank you as well for Ms. Nurma from the Bogor for the questions. So basically, You Inspires is youth and young professionals platform in innovations, science, technologies for resiliency. So the focus of You Inspires is more to like how youth can contribute in disaster risk reductions through science, engineering, technologies, and innovations. While EYDR stands for Indonesian Youth on Disaster Risk Reduction, is actually youth platforms. It's kind of like youth online platforms that are focusing more on spreading information regarding disaster risk reductions and sharing the knowledge, tips, and tricks of disasters to young people through social media. While even though we also have offline activities like the KTSB or Karang Taruna Siaga Bencana, but our activities mainly focus on online activities in EYDR. And moving forward to your questions, right, because Ms. Nurmas talked and asked questions about the strategic plannings for EYDR and You Inspire. So as I mentioned before, that EYDR is more so like a voluntary online platforms. So our strategic planning in the next 5 years is more to like giving and sharing as much as we can do information, knowledge, tips and tricks, and information, particularly regarding disaster risk reductions to communities at the grassroots, particularly communities at risk who have limited access, direct access of disaster knowledge, so they can connect and attain the information through social media that we have. While You Inspires, as I mentioned in the last presentations, is recognized as an official youth platform in Indonesia. So our strategic planning is actually to make You Inspires and as the platforms that connects all the youth and young professionals related activities and organizations in Indonesia to be in one platform. So we understand there are a lot of volunteering activities done by, let's say, civil societies, volunteer from universities, or even from private sectors. We are hoping now to actually make You Inspires as a platform or arena to connect all the youth and young professionals activities in disaster risk reductions, and make all this voice once together and becomes a bold and a strong movement of youth in DRR focusing on science, engineering, technology, and innovations. While at the global level, as in the last presentation as well, I mentioned that there are positive response from others, youth and young professionals in other countries that wish to replicate You Inspires in the respective countries. So we wish in the next 5 years, we have You Inspire branches in not only in ASEAN but also in Asia Pacific. I think that's all for my answers to Miss Norma.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Fajar, for very comprehensive explanations on that. I believe that Miss Norma will be apprised on what you just said. Again, I'll take this liberty as a moderator. Following up what you said earlier in the presentations, you clearly mentioned that there's no existing official youth platform on the RR within the government system. And then you keep repeating saying that youth needs to be fully involved in all stages of disasters. It's not partially, but fully involved. There's also a saying or say stereotype: youth is always being considered as a helpless and the mere victims of the DRR. But from your experience, how do you change the stereotype of youth has to be at the forefront of DRR in schools and beyond?
So I think that's a very interesting question regarding the mindsets of people, stakeholders even for youth in disasters. So we all know that by the data, like a third of youth is during disasters, a third of populations is children and youth. So oftentimes they only see youth as only part of the vulnerable group, like others, like children, pregnant women, and others. However, at the same time, if youth is equipped and empowered well with a certain knowledge of disasters, they actually can do more. So I'm learning from the Mr. Christian's that as well presentation that actually when they empowered youth in the Philippines, they can lead the change within their communities and do something at the village. Well, at the same time, it also happens in Indonesia. So basically, we trying to prove that actually youth cannot only be seen as the object or only simply be seen as volunteers during disasters, but they can also do more. They can also do a mapping. They can also do, let's say, co-op or lead the online discussions, making the infographics, making creative writings and spread information to counter the misinformation. That's kind of activities that we are trying to actually change the mindset of people when talking about youth and disasters.
Okay, that's very noble things that you do. Thank you, Fajar. I think we have a lot of person like you in Indonesia and in ASEAN to do something that you are passionate about, especially when it comes to DRR. Now I go to Mr. Christian. I think we have a lot of questions right now for both of you, but I'll just pick it one very interesting questions from Miss Rebecca from the US. Hey there. From the US. Thank you for the questions. Let me read out for you. Since Mr. Christian, you discussed recently about the youth-led adaptations action plans in the Philippines, and I think there's one relevant questions that might be thing for you to answer. The question is about how do we engage with and draw attentions from an older youth, especially for those who are in schools or university, it seems like they have I don't know, a natural point of entry. I'm sorry. Usually, those who are in school or university, they
Yeah.
actually have that how do you call it? A mindset already built up from the media and stuff. But what about those who are 25 years older? How do you engage with them?
Yeah, actually, I think what's unique with the structure of the Red Cross Youth in the Philippines is that we were able to saturate the youth group in the Philippines, both in school and in communities. When I say communities, this involves a young professional, or what we call the youth, maybe from ages 22 to 30 or 35 at most. So what we do are they are actually the uh, the alumni of different schools, and they are part of the Red Cross Youth before, and they become our youth leaders in the communities. So if after becoming part and being trained on the Red Cross principal services and programs, we are tapping these young professionals or our youth from 25 olders to be the role model of our youth from the lower ages. And besides, they are more connected to the local government or the local structure, and they have more networks and access that the younger youth can take advantage of.
Okay. Well, thank you for Mr. Christian for your very succinct answers on that. I also have a follow-up questions coming from Mr. Kunal from World Vision Regional Asia Pacific. Is specifically addressed to you. His questions is how. Well, first of all, thank you for the excellent presentations and the work done on DRR and school safety. His questions is related on how do we influence high schools and universities, both private and government, to include DRR as a part of the curriculum or through a voluntary service in the school.
Yeah. So as mentioned on my presentation, it is the role of the Red Cross headquarters in the Philippines to discuss or to deal with the Department of Education or with the Ministry of Education to present what are the DRR activities of the Philippine Red Cross and how or what can we offer to different school levels. We have elementary, we have junior high, senior high, and even university schools. And as what mentioned, the Y Adapt is actually patterned on a school curriculum that can be adopted in different levels, in different setup. And these are very game-based and interactive just to keep the attention of the students and the learners. Thus, the Department of Education really see the compatibility of the Y Adapt programming in the DRR activities of the school. Through with that, we signed a memorandum of agreement. I think it's really on the uh, discussion and argument of the both national level of the Philippine Red Cross and the Department of Education. And it is for the national head office of the Department of Education to cascade the agreement and for our local chapters to really make this agreement an advantage on our part in order to introduce the different DR activities of the Red Cross.
So are you implying that the key for this success is to have a joint and stronger engagement with all of the stakeholders involved, including the Ministry of Education, the Department of Education of the Philippines, as well as other relevant stakeholders who are involved in the DRR?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Christians. Now we also have a lot of questions coming up. Now we have Mr. Prime from Burundi, Africa, for for Fajar. His questions is well, the context is that they are setting up DRR clubs in the different schools, starting in the universities, but the problem is that they are lacking of knowledge or availability of information in that university. And how can you share as a part of your organizations um, to prevent and manage disaster in schools, especially for those who are doesn't have that knowledge or availability of information. Fajar?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So basically, uh, by our experience and our activities in collaborations with other stakeholders, so basically, what we do actually, I mean, the first point is actually to connect your institutions with other stakeholders that in your surroundings. So basically, uh, based on our experience, some of our activities is carried or are carried by the collaborations from the stakeholders. So I believe that you can get simply the information of, let's say, the preparedness of earthquake and so on, based on the hazard that is active in your countries on the internet. But on more specifically to the informations about what to do and specific issues, or even to facilitate this, our experience tells that actually it comes from the collaboration. So I suggest you to actually get connected and collaborate with other universities or schools that might have already have existing disaster resistance activities, or at least to connect with our networks in universities consortiums that also focus on disaster risk reduction activities.
In that case, Fajar, is your organizations the NGOs that you established, the Indonesian Youth on DRR, is willing to help? I mean, in the event that they are actually asking for informations, and where are they able to find these informations? Probably at your website or any social media or emails and stuff.
Yeah, sure. So actually, both through UIDR or You Inspires Indonesia, so you can get information through our website, which is you can check either on our blog or You Inspires on our website. But actually, for more specific information, I can actually connect you with the colleagues in Africa that actually might have similar activities or programs related to DRR in university.
Okay, that would be great. Thanks, Fajar. I think apart from us, we also have our colleagues from ASEAN Safe School Initiative Project Management Team, or PMT, who are here as well with me. So the work that they do, all of the informations, presentations, concept notes, and all the publications have been uploaded in the website. And it's also online now. The address is the www.ASEAN You can just Google it. You can find it, a lot of informations from there. I believe that you can have a lot of information when you would like to develop this DRR club in the universities or in schools. Or else you can just drop us an email asking about any publications that we have, which might be of useful for you to support your initiative back home. And how many minutes do we have? I think we have a lot of we have a lot of time here. Okay, we have questions for Mr. Duck Duck again. I'm sorry, Christians. I'm always mixed between Christians and Duck Duck, but I'll go for Christian now. We have questions from Indonesian Red Cross, Mr. Ali Mahsyar. Can you tell us the role of the Youth Red Cross in YADAP?
Okay, so they were our first entry on implementing the adapt programming. Because they're already part or core member of the Philippine Red Cross, we just initially selected few of our youth leaders to be trained as facilitators of the Y-Adapt, because as much as possible, we would like to have this Y-Adapt programming as a peer-to-peer learning amongst the youth. So basically, we tap our volunteers as youth leaders and facilitators in order to train other youth on how to go with climate change adaptation through Y-Adapt programming.
I see. Is there any website that the youth can join? You know, like can get this information online?
Yep, it's www.climatecenter.org.
www.climatecenter.org.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So for those of you, I think that's only for the Filipinos, right?
Oh, it's open to all.
Oh, open for all.
Global.
Okay. So
Yep.
for the youth who are into DRR, you can just join and then go to the website that was mentioned by Christians previously. Thanks, Christians.
Sure.
Okay, we have a lot of questions right now, but I think I'd also like to have ask questions from my point of view. It seems to me that the work that you do has a lot of things in terms of approaches. Like you have hazards app, you have virtual reality. It seems like your work involves a lot of technologies within. What about you engage with youth who are out of reach? For example, those who are living in a mountain area where they don't have internet or far from a technology. How do you engage with them so that they are aware that they need to be at the forefront of disaster when disasters come to their schools?
Okay, so actually they are our number one target, because working with the Philippine Red Cross, it's our mantra to serve the most vulnerable, and mentioning about those who are quote unquote unreachable are actually our priority. Thus, we also develop, as you can see, we have different game boards, we have different, it's not being shown, but we have other activities that can be accessed through manual. We have game boards, we have flip charts and alike. And we also have the traditional training programs from the youth that are not very much accessible to internet. And one of our main key activities is actually forming a Red Cross 143 volunteers in the community. These are the community volunteers that can be mobilized anywhere in the Philippines, whether or not accessible by the internet or not.
I see. Okay. Thank you, Christians, for sharing this information. Now I'm going back to questions from Miss Nuri from Indonesia. She's representative of one of a kind national zakat organization. What is zakat? Huh? Huh? Alms giving organizations in Indonesia, right? Yeah. She asked about MNE, monitoring and evaluation step on school safety. Wait a second. What is it? How do you make this monitoring and evaluations continuous and permanent when you do a presentation on DRR at school, for example, and a pre-kindergarten until universities? Does it have to be specific, like 2 or 6 hours in a class? Or does it have to be involving a role playing simulations action so that the students are understand and aware of this? This is for Fajar. I'm not sure whether you get my questions or not.
So thank you so much, Mr. Agung. So basically, I'm trying to understand the question. So basically, it seems that there are two separate questions. The first one is about monitoring and evaluations of school safety. The other one is about the viral presentations of the RRs at school that
Right.
that is conducted within a very short period of time, only 2 until 6 hours, right? So how make it as a permanent activity? So I believe that with a short period of time of only like socialization, learning class, and that is also in the simulation actions.
Okay.
In the same days at school, I'm trying to directly answering the answers, the question from Nuri. So I think it does not enough to actually conduct a full safe school implementations. And I believe that the safe schools implementations consists of three pillars uh, from the social suspect. I mean, from the training for the teachers, the students, the simulations, the drills, the map, until the checking the school infrastructures and so on. And that is a bit complex. But for a short period of, let's say, socializations, I don't think that is counted as safe school implementations rather than only a brief explanations on what to do at school. So I'm not considering that is at a safe schools initiative implementations rather than only a socializations or even like a drills of, let's say, earthquake or fires at schools to actually give additional informations for schools. But for the implementations of safe schools, it needs to be conducted comprehensively. And I believe we have Mas Renar here and also other colleagues from ASI and Safe School who know better about the safe schools implementations, I guess.
Okay, thanks, Roger. Following up what you said earlier, that it needs to have a continuous strategy on that. But how do you make sure that your approach is efficient and effective in addressing these issues? Because we talk about MNE, right? So the whole idea of MNE is to make sure whether this approach that you did in your organizations is effective and targeted to all the beneficiaries. And how do you measure based on your experience?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and as I mentioned as well on my presentation, so that we do aware that what we've done is actually not a full set of implementations, rather than only like a socializations or a drills. So our monitoring and evaluations to the school is actually conducted by checking the drums and connecting with them regularly about do they actually implement what we have stipulated during the drills, or if there's any improvements regarding the behaviors of, let's say, the students or the teachers when it comes to disasters and so on. So I think the monitoring and evaluations that we do is more to likely making connections with the schools and have better coordinations on what to actually needs to be improved, and at the end we trying to connect those schools to the local government agencies working in disasters or BPBDs to actually fulfill the gap or feeling a more additional aspect of Safe Schools Initiative at the schools that we have intervened.
Okay. Well, thank you, Fajar, for very quick answers on that. I think this is noted, and we still have questions coming from the participants. Well, this is for both of you, but I guess we can ask Christians first to answers. Is there any challenges involving the youth in DRR since as I understood earlier that you have the youth-led adaptations action plans. This is actually what I understand clearly from you. It's by youth, from youth, and for youth. And since the youth has a very active role on this, is there any challenges when you work with the youth?
Yeah. So first, yes, there are, and one of which is making them appreciate and making them realize that climate change is real and they can do something about it. Because in the Philippines, as I've mentioned, about 40% of the populations are youth, and most of them are very much focused on schooling, and it is quite difficult to have them engage in the DR activities. Actually, what we do in order to achieve or in order for them to be participative in this one is we really empower them in trainings and in giving them responsibilities that they can do something for the Philippines and for their communities. Youth can be an important agent of change in raising awareness and taking actions are our keywords in every time that we encourage them to be part of the Red Cross Youth and of the Philippine Red Cross. And yeah, first, it's really making them realize that they can do something.
Okay. Thanks, Christian. What about you, Fajar? Is there any challenges since yourself also part of the youth movement?
Yeah, I think similar to Mr. Duck Duck answers, the challenge is always at the first approach to the youth regarding, I think not only in disasters, climate change, and other topics, to make them aware that actually youth can do things, that actually youth can also play significant roles rather than only receiving the programs or just doing what the others uh, tell. So basically, the first points of approaches and make them understand their capacity is always the challenge. But after they realize, they understand their capacities and they capacity is empowered and they give a chance to lead. Based on our experience, it is proof that youth can actually play a more significant roles in disaster reductions based on their passions, abundance, based on their expertise. So some of you maybe love to do, let's say singing, or just like some youth love to uh, doing let's say an acting and everything. So we try to approach those youth by the things they love and then connect this with the disasters related effects.
Mhm. Okay, that's very enlightening to hear from you. Fajar, is there any opportunity to join Indonesia Youth DRR?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You can actually join UIDRR or even you inspires by checking our blog or website and then fill the Google forms. So then you can actually join and also uh, contribute in disaster risk reduction activities within UIDR and you inspire.
Okay. All right. So for everyone who is joining in the webinar, please take note of what Fajar said. But I think it's going to be posted. The presentation is going to be uploaded in the website of ASEAN Safe School Initiative. So you better check out that information lately if you want to follow up on that. We have two last questions for our experts. This is coming from Jean from China, People's Republic of China. Thanks for the questions. For the online interventions approaches, for example, a website, app, games, you've just mentioned, could you please share how you collect data of beneficiaries and how do you measure behavior change? This is speaking of the monitoring and evaluation. It could be for both of you. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
It can
So
be for
thank you.
Fajar and Christian, yeah.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question from Jin and Chunlin from China. So basically, regarding the monitoring evaluation, for examples, from our Cool or the online discussion through WhatsApp, how do we monitor and evaluate the activity, the act, the effectiveness of our Cool or online discussion? So basically, before we conduct the Cool or the online discussions, we will have the online registration form that is have several uh, points regarding the monitoring and evaluation questions. And then after the follow-up ends, we also will share the feedback forms to the participants. So basically, they will give us feedback on what the topic, the speakers, and what is the proposed topics in the next follow-up. So actually, we will receive the feedbacks not only for the topic, I mean the substance, but also the next proposed topics for the online discussion.
Okay. Christian, do you have something to add?
Yeah, okay. So I'd like to be specific in the VR game. So actually for that one, we have a mandatory evaluation sheet to be answered individually after each of the person try the VR. There is the experience, recommendation, and a rating from worst to excellent based on their experiences on the game. And through that, we were at least able to evaluate the experiences of the youth and how can we further improve the games that we have.
Okay. Well, it's good to know. And we have a very last questions today. It's very sad to conclude this session, but before we conclude, we have one questions from Renar, from ASI Project Management Team from Plan Internationals. The question is very specific. Since both of you are working closely with the government, if you have a chance or opportunity, what concrete supports would you need from them if you were to suggest or recommend? This is a very honest questions. So please, Christians or Fajar, would like to share something?
So yeah, thank you, Mr. Rena, for your very interesting question. So basically, what kind of concrete support that youth needs if it's recommended by the government? So as my last presentations conclude that actually in the case of Indonesia, the one and only support that we need from the government, actually the acknowledgements that youth can play more significant roles. So we want youth to be seen not only against as object, but as a subject, that youth is counted in decisions making process. Youth also have a space to actually do something related to the art that is connected with the government. So I think the greater space and acknowledgement from government is really needed to make youth can best contribute in the art in Indonesia.
Okay, I second your idea, Fajar, very much second. Christians, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I actually also agree with Fajar. And in addition, in the Philippines, I think we need to be supported on technical and expert matters, and especially in financial for implementing youth-led activities.
Okay. So two takeaways from you. Seeing the youth as a subject, not an object of the DRR in schools, and it's hopeful and expected that the government could provide a technical and financial support for this. With that, I would like to thank both of you for joining us today. Fajar and Christians, thank you so much for your very thoughtful presentations on this. I think there are a lot of key takeaways, but if I may, I will just wrap up with two key takeaways. The first is that the youth could play very multiple roles at all stages of disasters. Fajar, you mentioned with your example that there are a lot of activities and initiatives, for example, by creating a disaster infographics, joining the Indonesian youth on DRR, and having the youth volunteering for DRR socialization and school drills. That's one of the examples. And in terms of volunteerism, just to let everyone know, the ASEAN Secretariat also work very closely with the ministries in charge of education and the youth. You mentioned earlier that in terms of initiative, we have ASEAN Youth Volunteering Program. That's also one of the deliverables that our member states has initiated I think that's Malaysia who champions this initiative, and that's under the ASEAN Work Plan on Youth 2016-2020. Apart from that, we also have a lot of initiatives in terms of youth volunteerism. We have YSS, it's Yayasan Sukarelawan Siswa, or student volunteer foundations from Malaysia as well under the Ministry of Education. That also can be one of the good initiative that the youth in ASEAN could join. And the second key takeaways, I would say that there are a lot of innovative approaches involving youth in development. Christians also mentioned about the role of technology. You have a virtual reality. You also have the Hazards app. And provided that a lot of youth right now have mobile phone in their hands, I think it's easier for them to be aware of this DRR, even especially when we use this technology to make them aware. And with that, thank you so much for joining us today for the fourth webinar. This is a very good initiative, especially because I think we are having a lot of participants coming from Africa, from China, from all over the world, which we believe it's going to be useful for everyone to learn. And all of the information here is going to be uploaded in the website. Please, you can check out in the www.aseansafeschoolinitiative.org. Or do you have Instagram or Twitter? Oh, Twitter and Facebook as well. All of the information will be given by Mbak Melly. So with that, please allow me to conclude this. Thank you so much for joining me. And then I will give it to Melly again for the polling. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mas Agung. May I have your additional 5 minutes to fill in the polls? Please fill in the polling. There are 3 questions. For the first question, by choosing the multiple choice below, how did you find the fourth ASI webinar? And then for the second one, what did you learn the most from today's webinar? Okay, for number 1, we have okay, for number 1 is A and also B. Okay, now A. For the second question, okay, everybody just learned about the youth efforts in leading their activities in school safety and climate action. And for the third one, okay, all participants want to have another ASI webinar in 2020.
The answer is yes.
Okay, thank you for all your attention. Thank you for Mr. Fajar and also Mr. Christian for your great presentation. And also Mr. Agung Pamungkas for the host and also the great moderator. Okay, since this webinar is the last webinar of ASI, so hopefully we can have another ASI webinar event in 2020. And for all materials, we will download it in the website ASEAN Safe Schools Initiative.org. And we will also email to all of you that already registered for the registration form. Have a good day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Christian bilang good night. Oh, udah malam. Baik.
Pak, ini relaunch.